All right. Welcome to our second episode of Mosquito Bites Live in honor of National Mosquito Week. Yesterday we had a really great conversation with Andy Lima, aka MC Bugsy, talking all things communications in mosquitoes. Today we're super excited to bring 305 Mosquito, which is the vector control agency in Miami-Dade County. So stick with us all week long. We have really great organizations and people coming up. Tomorrow will be PR Puerto Rico Vector Control in Spanish, very exciting. And we'll have Orange County OC Vector Control District coming up on Thursday. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on 305 Mosquito right now and get our conversation started. So let's see. He should be coming in just a few minutes. Hey, Michael, how are you?
Hey, Pablo. Good. How are you doing?
Very good. Good to see you. Thanks for jumping on with us today.
Good to see you, and thanks for having us on.
Of course, as you know, this week is National Mosquito Week, so we're super excited to have you. Can you just give a brief description of you, where you're coming from, and your district?
Sure. Well, my name is Michael Mut, M-U-T. I'm the Public Information Officer for Miami-Dade County Mosquito Control. Prior to this, I had no experience whatsoever in mosquito control, like many of us. I had really no idea how much goes into it and how important and really thankless a job and a role it is. So I've since become somewhat of an expert on mosquito control, and I'm really excited to be here with you to recognize and be a part of National Mosquito Control Awareness Week, and hopefully we'll be able to give you a perspective of what it's like down here in Miami-Dade County.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely agree. Miami, you guys deal with a whole different beast out there. I've been to Miami, and the humidity is definitely no joke. So props to you guys for dealing with that on a day-to-day. So the purpose of our conversation today is to talk about mosquito-borne diseases, which is the biggest threat of why mosquitoes are so dangerous to us as humans. So Michael, can you give me a perspective of what's the most dangerous vector-borne disease we face in the United States, but more specifically what you guys face out in Florida?
Well, Paul, that's a great question. And, it's funny in thinking about the question. I think that the first thing that really hit me was that what we have in common is not only, the vector that's Aedes aegypti, but we're both now dealing with West Nile virus. I mean,
Yeah.
prior to this recent, I'm not going to say it's an outbreak because we've only really identified 4 cases of West Nile virus here this year, but that's still very much a cause for concern because, as you know, and maybe as some of our viewers might not know, but West Nile virus is potentially serious. It can kill you. So that's something that's of a concern for us right now. And everyone knows that Zika was a big deal here in 2016. That's actually, Zika is the reason why we're even talking. Because after Zika, really, Miami-Dade County, the budget went from $2 million a year to $16 million. And we didn't have a dedicated PIO assigned to the Mosquito Control Division. So there was actually 2 positions that were created, one of which is this one, mine. So I'm very grateful. I mean, it's scary and sad that it had to be that way, and because that it happened that way. But I'm grateful for Zika because it gave me an opportunity to really continue my career in marketing and public relations in mosquito control. So that's a long way of saying that Zika and West Nile virus are concerned, but also because of our proximity to Cuba, and because there are so many Cuban Americans, myself being one of them. Here in Miami-Dade County, there's a lot of travel back and forth, or at least there was prior to coronavirus. There was a lot of travel between Miami and Cuba, and they're having a huge problem with dengue right now. So we were seeing a lot of travel-related cases of dengue coming in. We're seeing like 3, 4, 5 cases a week coming in. So that's a very serious disease. Also, there's four types of dengue, 2 of which are deadly. So it is something that we're very much aware of, and Aedes aegypti is one of the vectors for dengue. So it's something that we're really keeping our eye on here in Miami-Dade County.
That's good, and I really like how based on what virus is something that we both face here in California. We deal with also travel-associated cases of people coming in. But the biggest threat that we face here is West Nile virus. West Nile virus is endemic to the state of California, meaning it never truly goes away. Present. It's just a matter of when it gets into the human population. And I really like how you touch base on, even though there's only 4 cases in for you in of West Nile virus currently, at least in the San Gabriel Valley right now, we don't have any humans yet. But that's always very important to know. Our sister agency, Greater LA Vector Control, is already finding West Nile virus in their area, and that's something that we always emphasize to the public. And I think that's that we're all learning as we continue to deal with COVID-19. That even though we have numbers and we're identifying cases and whatnot, but it's important to know that that's just what we're finding. That those numbers are basically just a needle in the haystack of what's really out there. Of people who aren't going to the hospital or people who aren't necessarily reporting because it affects everyone very differently. So that's really important. I think that people in public health and the general public have a hard time understanding and trying to get that information out there. And just like you said before, being in the communication side of it is very important too, because this information is very important to the public, and getting that out there properly is super important. So that leads me to my next question. And hopefully when we are able to travel safely again, and once that starts to pick up, who knows when, but what are important things that people should really take in consideration when they do travel abroad, or even, for example, for me from California, if I were to travel to Florida?
Well, that's a great question, Pablo. And, the first thing I would tell you is if you're going to come from California over to Florida, remember there are mosquitoes here too. So you have to be just as careful, and you have to take as many precautionary steps as you would if you were at home. Particularly here in South Florida, there's about 50 different types of mosquitoes. Down here, some of them are invasive, some of them are native. Here in Miami-Dade County, we are sandwiched between the Everglades to our west, and that's as you know, salt marsh, black salt marsh mosquitoes are definitely coming from there. And then on the east side, we have the Biscayne National Park, which they're full of mangroves and black salt marsh mosquitoes. So we're kind of surrounded here. So it's very important to take precautions to pack that mosquito repellent. And I think in some of our prior conversations, one of the things I wanted to bring up as far as travel is that we distribute as one of our goodies in public information and outreach events. We have mosquito repellent wipes, which are like little towelettes, and they're packaged in really small, tiny pouches, which are great for travel. And it works just like a wet nap. And the beauty of these things are that they're not oil based, they're water based, so they go on very smoothly. They last about 7 hours. Actually, those are my preferred methods of applying mosquito repellent, because some of the sprays, they're oil based, and you can't really spray your clothing, and you got to be very careful when you're using DEET, that it doesn't stain your clothes. But I would definitely recommend, if you're traveling, don't forget your mosquito repellent.
Definitely, that's a really, really important thing to keep in mind. I always make sure I'm packing repellent every time I travel. I think it should be a staple in everyone's travel essentials when they go out. And I think it's also important to note, like you were mentioning, the different types of mosquito repellent that are out there. I think a lot of people think that there's just DEET, and that's the only thing that you can use. DEET is kind of the golden standard, but there's oil lemon eucalyptus, there's picaridin, there's IR 3535. For one of the 4 active ingredients, you got to make sure you have one of those to make sure you're using effective mosquito repellent. And really, it essentially comes down to what works best for you. Us as humans, we're all different, and we're all going to react and treat their effect will be a little different on all of us. But as long as you have one of those 4, that's super important to make sure you have that.
Right, and that's a great point. I'm glad you brought up the 4 different types. I would just like to add to that personally, I think DEET works the best, and it's what I use. But some people are more into like natural, sort of the softer edge of mosquito repellent. So that right. I would highly recommend the oil of lemon eucalyptus.
Definitely, and that leads me to my third question. As we, for example, you're coming from Florida, and then I'm here based in Southern California. What are some of the biggest differences that you guys face? I know you guys deal with a lot more travel associated cases just of your location and then the type of environment you guys are in. How is that different for you guys? Like you were mentioning earlier, that you guys definitely deal with more dengue, and you guys dealt with Zika at its peak, had local transmission of Zika. So how does that affect you guys?
Why? There's a lot of similarities, between where you are and where we are. Definitely we share the West Nile. I think we've covered that. We definitely both have the same sort of problem with our friend back there, Ada. You know, yeah. Hello, hit me. So as far as the similarities and some of the differences, I think some of the things we also have to look out for are I would say some of the plants that are in our yards.
Right.
I'm pretty sure bromeliads are just as big out there as they are over here, and that's one source of breeding that's really oftentimes overlooked, and that's something that we definitely preach here. We have our own standalone piece when we give out information to the public just about bromeliads. And
Right.
it's something where if you weren't aware, and again, 4 years ago when I wasn't in mosquito control, I had no idea where these things were breeding. So it's important to note that if you have bromeliads, you definitely have to treat them with larvicide. And you have to do this on a continual basis, because if you don't, you're going to really invite a lot of trouble to your front yard, and that's something no one wants to deal with at this time of year, especially since a lot of us are home. That's another thing we have in common. The quarantine is pretty much nationwide. So we're seeing down here that we've had an increase in mosquito control, mosquito inspection requests, not just because it's the season, because there are higher temperatures and more rainfall, but because you have more people at home, more people working from home, just like I am right now, just like you are, I'm sure. You have more of a chance of being bitten in your own backyard. So that's something that we're probably both experiencing at the moment. So that's something to be aware of. When you're doing housework, make sure you wear your repellent before you go outside.
Exactly, and that's something really good to point out. Like you said, bromeliads, and that's something here in California. People love their bromeliads. Our technicians come in contact with bromeliads all the time, and I know they internally roll their eyes. People love their bromeliads. Nothing wrong with bromeliads, but we prefer people not to have them because they are natural. They naturally hold stagnant water, and they'll just breed mosquitoes like crazy. But if you don't need it, we prefer you not to have it. You have to make sure you're constantly removing the water and adding the water into the bromeliads. So that's
Right.
definitely really important to take note of for sure.
Yeah, I just want more
Yeah, go
points. Interrupt. Just a quick story about the bromeliads here in during 2016. We found the Miami Beach's South Beach, the world famous South Beach, was one of our hotspots for local transmission. And then we further discovered that bromeliads, back then, that really came to the forefront, how mosquitoes, particularly Aedes aegypti, they were using bromeliads to reproduce. And in one instance, the city of Miami Beach, one of the hotspots, the ground zero for them was one of their botanical gardens, which had like 10,000 bromeliads. And unfortunately, sadly, they removed all of them. And they actually took the further step of removing bromeliads from all of their public places.
ahead.
Now, us as a county as a whole, we don't particularly recommend removing them, because we recognize that bromeliad farming down here, we don't like to generally encourage that sort of economic impact. We like to respect everyone's right to make a living and to continue farming. So what we do highly recommend is for people to add bromeliad to their bromeliads, and the larvicide. And we don't particularly endorse one brand, because that's just not fair to all the brands. But one of them that is very effective is they're called mosquito bits. So you can probably search that up on the internet. You could find any number of different types of manufacturers, but it's very, very effective. So we highly recommend that.
Yeah, definitely. If you see a bromeliad, I'm pretty sure mosquito larva or mosquito adult are not far from there.
You're right.
With my last question that I've been kind of asking everyone we do these lives with your experience in mosquito control and jumping into the mosquito world, essentially, what has been kind of your favorite mosquito fun fact or thing that you've come across when it comes to mosquitoes?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. I have two little things that were surprising to me. The first of which was that only female mosquitoes bite. I had no idea prior to starting, my position here with Miami-Dade County that was the case. And the other thing is, I never knew that mosquitoes they don't draw blood to nourish themselves. What they do is they draw blood, they draw the protein specifically from the blood to nourish their eggs. So I had no idea that was the case. And it's funny, it's interesting that they're no different than like a common bee, where they use sugared water and they go into flowers to draw that water to nourish themselves. So I had no idea, and that was really something that opened my eyes. Those two little factors.
Really, that's very, very interesting. Mosquitoes definitely their whole biology. Really look at them up close. They're a whole different beast than what we are normally kind of used to. Well,
Right.
thank you so much for jumping in on this Mosquito Bites Live with us during National Mosquito Week. We greatly appreciate it, and also getting your perspective of being out there in Florida and what kind of you guys deal with, and also the similarities with here in California. And I think it's a really great, as we're all adjusting to the new normal during the COVID-19 pandemic, trying to do these initiatives, connecting with you Instagram this way, I think is a great way to still continue our outreach and communicating to residents on what we can all do while we're at home, eliminating stagnant water, tipping out that water, tossing any unused containers, and then also protecting yourselves, like you said, when you're at home, if you're going out running errands or anything like that, protecting yourself by using the right type of mosquito repellent.
Right. As we like to say down here, drain and cover and fight the bite. But Pablo, thank you again very much for not only doing this, but for thinking of us and having given me the opportunity to come on. And please give my best to Levy and to all the rest of the wonderful staff. You guys do amazing work, and we're really proud to I'm really proud that we have this relationship. We're able to do this kind of exchange, because it's very important. As you said, as communicators, this type of opportunity is really very important. Not just during Mosquito Week, but I hope down the line when it's not Mosquito Week, because there's 51 other weeks of the year that this is very important. So thanks.
Exactly. We got to make sure we're protecting ourselves from mosquitoes all year long. Again, thank you so much, Michael, for joining us all in Florida in Miami-Dade County. To all the viewers tuning in today, thank you again. Be sure to stick around all week. We'll be talking with Puerto Rico Vector Control tomorrow, which I'm very excited will be in Spanish. And yeah, it's going to be very exciting. And then we'll be talking with Orange County Vector Control right here that is also based in Southern California.
Another bunch of amazing people out there.
Definitely. Well, again, Michael, thank you so much for joining us for Mosquito Bites Live, and we hope everyone keeps tuning in for our Mosquito Bites Live.
Thank you, Pablo. Have a great rest of the day, and thanks to everyone for tuning in.
Thanks,
Bye.
Michael.
Take care.